The GPS DairyCAST features the high-value insights of the GPS Dairy Consulting team's trusted advisors and the owners and managers from the elite dairy farms they serve. These conversations deliver on the GPS Dairy Consulting promise to inspire change and grow leaders.
Hello and welcome to the GPS DairyCAST. I'm Peggy Coffeen from the Up-Level Dairy Podcast, serving as your host, and I'm coming to you today from the 2023 GPS Leaders Forum. One of the highlight speakers of this year's event was Pete Gelber, a dairyman and dairy manager from Barrington Dairy and Highbrighton Dairy in Georgia. He's joined today with GPS Dairy consultant Stephanie Jens, and they're going to dig into some of the key details of what he talked about at the Leaders Forum, all about gaining employee buy-in and engagement and building a culture for success on a dairy. Enjoy this conversation with Pete and Stephanie.
All right, Pete, thanks for joining us and being a speaker for us at our 2023 Leaders Forum. I would love to visit a little bit more about your story of transitioning from employee to manager owner.
As you all can tell, I'm from the South Bronx. So I had kind of a long and winding road there. My father wanted to keep me out of trouble when we were kids, and we got shipped up to upstate New York, and we worked on a 30-cow dairy as my brothers and sisters and myself. And then I went to Cornell and knocked around New York State for a while. I started working for this guy named Ron St. John, and he moved to Florida, and I moved with him. And then I got a little bit of sweat equity, and I ended up owning these two bankrupt dairies in South Georgia. And so I started out with getting phantom stock, and then it turned into a partnership. And then about 10 years ago, I was able to buy my partners out. And now I'm getting old myself, so I have some younger partners that are following in my footsteps.
So, Pete, tell me a little bit more about your dairies that you have right now.
Right, so we're milking a little over 13,000 cows, and we have one big hunk of land, and we have a dairy on the north end of it and a dairy on the south end of it. I always tell people our dairies are a little bit like me. They were never very pretty. They getting kind of old, but they're still getting the job done. So we have, for our spot in the world, we have pretty high production. We're shipping just under 30,000 pounds of milk per cow. Last week we had about 415 butter fat. We don't get paid for protein, so I don't even know what it is. And we have about 115,000 somatic cell count. And we grow corn for silage, then we grow millet, and then we have wheat for the winter crop. And we get tremendous yields on all three crops. We get a lot of yield per acre.
And what does your team look like that helps you day in and day out?
So we have a mainly Latino workforce. And my son, Richard, is 38, is my partner, and he is the crop guy, engineer guy, outdoor guy. And then I have Andre, who's our veterinarian from New York State. And he's our herd manager, and he's a profits partner. And then I have three employees, Ruben, Amadeo, and Chewy, that are all Latinos from Mexico. They've all been with me in excess of 20 years, and they are phantom stock owners. And phantom stock is kind of being like a profits partner, but it doesn't have some of the perks. But it also is easy to get in and get out in case you wanted to make a change.
Sure. That's pretty awesome to hear the opportunities that they have. So when you're looking at some of these employees that have been with you for so long, what are some of the things that you're looking for in employees that would fit well into the culture that you guys have created?
So I think the biggest part about it is you have to have a committed person that shares the same values. So everybody talks about tangibles and intangibles. And you know, when they say get a quarterback for football, you need to have the intangibles. Well, that's true, but you also have to have a guy with a strong arm and can read the field. And I think this is the same way with employees. So you have to have a guy that's moral and has some people skills, but he also has to have a specialty and really be good at what he does. We try to have both of them. So you can have a good employee that's not particularly good with money, and you want to have them working there for the rest of your life, but you don't particularly want to get married with them. And having a partner is being married.
Yeah. So how does that change when you're looking for employees that you might see fit into a manager role within your organization? Are there certain characteristics or things that you're really looking for to elevate them to a different level?
I think the number one thing is intensity. When you have an employee that really cares about his job and is really into it, that person usually floats up. And if you have a person that you know, a young person that you know that they're going to be successful, you can choose to have them be successful or her be successful at your place, or they're going to go someplace else and find that success. If you're not making that choice, it's subconsciously, or however you want to say that, it's going to be made for you. So, for example, I have a young Latina girl that works for us, and she's 21, and she's got unlimited potential. She's fantastic with cows. She's extremely hardworking, and she's going to be successful in life. So if we don't move her up through the ranks and pay her extremely well, she's going to be successful in some other business or some other person's dairy.
Pete, you just talked about what you look for in the person, but what about the skill set that they might need with that?
Okay, so we're all born with no skill, basically.
Okay.
And skills are something that can be taught. Basically, a good attitude and a strong work ethic and smarts trump skills that people bring to the dairy. I can teach somebody how to trim a foot. So I think that we really are very, very focused on effort and attitude. And then as a person works on the dairy and matures, they pick up skills. And then we always try to open the door of opportunity for people to learn more while they're there. It's a long-term process. So for leaders on our farm, we don't just willy-nilly pick a guy. It takes them years to float up to the top.
Building off of that, what does make a good leader for your farm?
Leaders need to be fair. They need to stick up for what's right. They have to do what's right, whether it hurts the company or if it's on the side of the employee or the side of the company. It doesn't matter. It's got to do what they consider is fair. And the last thing you want is an employee that thinks of a manager or a supervisor as somebody that's always going to side with the company. See, they need to have their own voice. So the other thing is managers need to walk the walk. So we're a very physical, lead by example type of place. So if you're a dairy guy on our farm and you're not wearing rubber boots, you're probably not going to be welcomed by the clientele. And if you're a crop guy and you're not wearing lace-up shoes, they're going to look down on you because it gets muddy in Georgia. We have that Georgia clay. If you're wearing pullover boots, you're going to walk out of them when you're in our fields. So I think it's very important that we have hands-on managers. And the other thing is managers need to be there on Sundays. They need to be there on holidays. And if your cows get behind milking on the weekend and you don't know about it till Monday morning, you have a problem. And it's gonna really affect your profitability if you're speeding up and slowing down, and those cows aren't getting treated the same every day. I think sometimes people, they used to call me a crisis manager. And I think part of the dairy business is you're always managing a crisis. There's a baby being born. There's a cow that's toxic. There's a machine that's broken down. And if you don't react to these things, and sometimes it might be only a $10 an hour job that you're doing, but that $10 an hour job turns into $1,000 or $10,000. And I think that a lot of people take themselves too seriously and think that they're above certain jobs on the farm, and they're not. Nobody is, including myself.
Pete, one of the things that you talked about in your presentation today was, as a manager, as an owner, using your strengths to your advantage, and how that might be different for yourself or your son. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Sure. So I always talk about people embracing their psychotic disorders. So what I mean by that is, okay, some people tend to be bipolar. I'm ADHD. I've never been diagnosed that, but they'd probably put me in the dummy class now if I was in school. It'd be giving me Ritalin. My old boss used to say, if you want to find Pete, just stay in one place. He's like a gnat. He'll come around and bother you. So my strength is I'm a happy culture guy. So I'm making the place. I give enthusiasm and vision and excitement to our dairies. And if you want somebody that's going to give you procedure and rules and regulations, I'm not your guy, and I'm terrible at it. So I'm smart enough to have people in my organization that do that, and have my secretaries. They tell me when they manage my life. They don't let me forget my appointments. They have my papers to sign. They know if I'm gonna. They give me a copy of something to look at. They better make a duplicate because the chance of it going out the truck window is pretty high. And if you don't like standing in front of people, and if you're not socially confident, maybe you're not the guy to have meetings. Maybe somebody else in your organization. So what I always try to do is use my strengths to do what I'm good at and do a lot of that. And I try to, the things that I'm not good at, I try to turf to somebody else. So that's how we do things on our dairy.
So what does that look like exactly? You're the fun guy. You're the guy that brings the energy. What does that look like on a day-to-day basis?
All right, so everybody, one of the things about being a good dairyman, I'm convinced, is you gotta like the routine and you gotta like the ho-hum daily grind. And I'm a grinder. So I used to get up a lot earlier, but one thing they always say, two things that dairyman always lies about is what time he started and how much milk his cows are making. But I get to work at 6 o'clock every morning, and I milk just fresh heifers at our one dairy. We calve all our cows at one dairy, and then we use the other dairy as a satellite. So that's the last hour of the night shift and the first 15 minutes of the first shift. So I get to see 2/3 of our milkers at that dairy every day. And I also get to see our heifers. We push them in, and we call it having an adult present. We have a really good cow throughput, and we milk a whole pile of cows an hour compared to 95% of all the dairies in the country. But the reason why we do it isn't because we're so great, it's because we cheat. So one of the things that we cheat is we have extra people in there when we have the unruly cows, the cows that don't know what they're doing just yet. And we have mature people like myself and or the parlor manager in there every day, and we make the job a joy and fun instead of something that the milkers dread. So it goes from possibly the worst pen of the day to the most fun pen of the day. So we always checking out, seeing which cow is going to make the most milk, who's going to have a hard time milking a heifer that's not used to getting milked. So there's a lot of kidding and joking that goes around, and it really makes the day for a lot of those people. So I start my day that way. Then when I get done, I go to the other dairy, which is 5 miles down the road, 5 miles south. Then I go through the feed pit and check in with the feeders, and we check out the silages, and then I go make feed adjustments on the computer, and then I check in on the parlor there and just basically say good morning to everybody. Then after that, I go on to the job of the day, which might be making nice with a neighbor that we woke up in the middle of the night roaring by with tractors, or meeting with people, or throwing tires and pulling plastic or whatever the job of the day is. And so anyway, that's how I start, and then the day kind of unravels, and I really don't have a whole lot of plans more than that, but for some reason or other, I'm always busy the whole day.
That's great. And a lot of that is really about setting those intentions right away, setting those positive impressions and making even routine tasks fun, right? And creating that environment for your employees.
So one thing I do when I try to get around my people is I try to visit with them. If you're making like you're running for Congress and you're kissing the baby and shaking hands and running, people won't tell you the rest of the story. So if you sit there and you talk to the hoof trimmer and you watch a few cows with them, or you visit with the guys pulling calves or giving colostrum, then all of a sudden the rest of the story comes out, and that's where you need to know that. You need to be in the know as an owner or a manager. And I think a lot of people don't, and they just think everything is fine. Well, us Americans, our culture is such that we can be pretty direct and say what we want. In the Latino culture, you got to have a kind of a little bit of a point there of a humanitarian connection before they speak. I think that's really important to realize that.
Save the date for the 2024 GPS Dairy Leaders Forum, happening this December 3rd through 5th, 2024 at the Mystic Lake Hotel and Casino in Prior Lake, Minnesota. Held after a busy fall of harvest and fieldwork, the Leaders Forum brings together some of the best and brightest leaders in the dairy industry. Over 20 world-class speakers, interactive breakout sessions, and keynote speakers provide a dynamic learning experience and renewed excitement to network and connect with other innovative and successful dairy producers from multiple states and regions. Mark your calendars for 2 days of forward-thinking, vision, innovation, and looking to the future. The 2024 GPS Dairy Leaders Forum this December 3rd through 5th, 2024. Talk to a GPS consultant to learn more or visit gpsdairy.com.
Well, Pete, you just mentioned that there is some cultural difference in sometimes how we might deliver a message, whether it's direct or slightly more indirect. How do you balance that, being a direct individual, but having employees that maybe don't receive that direct message as well?
Well, sometimes I'm actually appalled at how direct I am. So it's usually, if it's on my mind, it's out my mouth. And I think that's pretty good, especially when you're dealing with a rougher cut, less educated person. If you don't get to the point, so if you see something going wrong and you don't say something about it, the message you send is whatever they're doing is okay. So if a guy's driving his tractor too fast and you don't stop him and tell him he's driving his tractor too fast, well, then he's going to drive it faster next time. So I think that's really important that you got to be direct with people. But being direct also doesn't mean you have to be a jerk about it. You can ask them in a nice way, and if you have a relationship with that person, then they know that you're not out after them and just trying to bust them for something. They know that you care about them and you care about the company, and then so that's what we're trying to foster, is that buy-in, that, hey, maybe if I drive that tractor or do whatever I'm doing wrong a little better, my job performance matters. That's the message I want to send to people.
So, Pete, you're really involved with your employees from the top to the bottom of your organization. How do you make sure that you can still connect to employees but not undermine your management team in the process of that?
That's a good question, and on many occasions I've been accused of that by my managers when they get ticked off at me. And I think the biggest thing that I have going for me is we try to have an open and honest relationship with everybody. So if an employee's mad and he comes to me and says something, or I don't egg him on, I stick up for my managers. And I'm not going to give an employee a day off when he asks for it. I send him back to his manager. But sometimes you just have these conversations that are important from, if a guy is doing something wrong and needs to be doing something better, and that manager needs to be secure enough to know that I'm not after his job or stepping in his way or stepping on his toes. I just trying to help him out. And yeah, once in a while it can get sticky, and it will. I also think that me interacting with an employee is also gives the department guy a boost, because he knows that I have his back on helping him and keep his protocols enforced. So for example, my son does the outside, he's a crop guy, and if he sends me a picture of a guy doing something in the barns, I'm glad to get it. I'm not mad at him. It gives me something to chase down and make better. So if everybody's got the right mindset that they're trying to help the dairy move forward, I think it's fine. When people get squirrely about it is when somebody's unsure of themselves, or they're trying to keep things a secret and they don't want me to find out, or somebody to find out that something's going wrong in the department. And then if that's happening, you probably don't have the right department head. You should have somebody that can admit their faults easily.
Pete, one of the other things that you shared in your presentation were some of the rules that you have about team meetings. Can you dive into that a little bit and share with us some of your thoughts around that?
I started out as a cow man and a hard worker, and I was pretty good with money. And so we never really, this whole labor thing, you kind of grew into it and you learned. It was pretty gruesome sometimes, So I remember one time, a long time ago, this is probably 35 years ago, I had this meeting and this employee told me, said, just because you bought me a pizza doesn't give you the right to chew my butt for an hour. I thought, ooh, that kind of hurt, because he was absolutely right. So then we have all of these people counselors and labor experts come to us, and it's cool to have meetings. Everybody should have meetings, and I was all into that at one point in my life too. And really, I think sometimes people have meetings to have meetings isn't the thing to do. You need to have meetings to communicate, but you can communicate other ways also. So for example, just more is not better. So when I have a meeting, we always have an hour max. And if you have it with like a lower quality employee, like milkers or lower level herdsmen, 20 minutes, 30 minutes probably should be your max. And then you try to make 3 points, stick with those 3 points, and move on. But the mornings are not for meetings. So if you have a meeting at 8 o'clock, it might be really convenient for me, because I just got done milking my hospital with my fresh cows, and I'm all ready to get my work done for the day. But how about the guy that's treating the sick cows and the guy trimming feet? He's not done yet. So lunch is a great time for a meeting. Plus you can buy your employees lunch. You kill 2 birds with 1 stone. The other thing I like to do is I like to try to get meetings very inclusive. So I ask employees questions, and then like if you have a milker meeting, you better I have a $5 bill. Okay, for $5, who can answer this question? Now you get these people involved, and everybody's fighting over who's going to answer the question instead of everybody saying, geez, I hope he doesn't pick at me. The other thing I'll always do is I watch the body language of the people at the meeting. People are digging the cow poop out of their nails, or scratching their ears, or checking their messages on the cell phone. You lost them. So you better just quit. If you quit while you're behind, my mother used to say. So the last thing the last point I'd like to make about meetings is sometimes people have these reports. They report how many cows calved each day, or it's just so boring. Have your Google Docs. Everybody can get on a cell phone now and look things up. And then have the department heads they need to tell you the thrills of victory and the agony of defeat. They don't need to be telling you they had X amount of cows had babies and all this other stuff that you know already anyway. So that's my spiel about meetings.
That's great. Thank you. Well, Pete, it has been great chatting with you. Do you have any final thoughts for us on employees and creating that buy-in to the culture?
So I think a lot of people, a lot of dairies and businesses have realized that you can't yell and scream at your people the way we did 30 years ago. And not that it worked then either. So people have gotten warm and fuzzy. So what I mean by warm and fuzzy, we take people to the ball game. We have good parties. We play volleyball on Friday afternoon after work. We'll drink a beer with the employees at the volleyball game. But in reality, that makes coming to work pleasant, but you're not meeting the employees' goals. So from day one, when the employee starts at our dairy to the year 20, the guy's goals have changed. And everybody's got different talent levels and different expectations. So day one, a guy comes in from a foreign land and he needs a dry place to live where he's not going to get bullied or beat up, and he wants to have money at the end of the week to send home to his mother in his foreign country. Then fast forward a year later, he's going to want a car, and he's going to want a girlfriend, then he's going to want to buy a house. Then if the employee's a good employee, he's a go-getter, he's going to want to build wealth. He's going to want to build a house in Mexico or Guatemala, wherever he's from. And then he's going to want freedom on his job. He's going to want to have input. He's going to have opportunity. So you can supply all of those things to a guy and keep an employee for a long time, or pretend they don't exist, and then he'll go get, if he's really good, he's going to get him someplace, and it might not be for you. So I really think that you got to be aware of people's needs and what their dreams are. And, sometimes your dreams and their dreams aren't going to match up, and that's fine. They can go work someplace else. But I think that a lot of times people leave organizations, and the organization really could have done a little more for them and gotten a whole lot better results. So we try to be sensitive about that. We have a lot of things. We have people, we buy houses for employees. We have retirement funds, and we have a summer program where we'll hire your kid no matter how big a loser he is. We just put up with the kids, and all the employees are about ready to kill me at the end of the summer. But then when their kid gets up to that age, guess what? Their little ray of sunshine is working there too. So everybody knows better to really complain too much. So anyway, I think that meeting the employees' needs is a huge part, a piece of the pie.
That is great. Thanks so much for taking the time to sit down with us.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
You just heard from Pete Gelber from Barrington Dairy and Highbrighton Dairy, as well as GPS Dairy Consulting team member Stephanie Jens. Thank you for jumping on with us for this GPS DairyCast, coming to you from the 2023 GPS Leaders Forum. I'm your GPS DairyCast host, Peggy Coffeen from the Up Level Dairy Podcast, and thank you for listening.
The GPS DairyCast features conversations that deliver on the GPS Dairy Consulting promise to inspire change and grow leaders. If this GPS DairyCast has you looking for more ways to become an elite dairy producer, find more information in our show notes on how you can add a GPS advisor to your team.